I always try to think of something witty to come on the air with, and I got nothing today. So
I don't either.
I'm a big old dud. I don't know what to say, but let me see a couple of people. That thing turned into an eyeball. That little scheduled thing goes red, goes live.
Oh, there we
and
go.
Then little eyeballs up there, and 2, 3, whatever.
They'll get in.
Big audience. Here we go. We are. I can't walk out in public anymore. I go into the grocery store and I get identified by the 4 followers that we have. It's pretty impressive. But
they're all getting off work. They're joining.
Yeah, well, 5:30 Eastern and 4:30 Central is always a bit goofy. I don't know.
Yeah.
East Coast, I don't have the lifestyle, so I don't know how that pans out for those guys. I know that it would get a little rough staying up till midnight, 1 a.m. watching the West Coast games if I was playing, but I think they start school and work and stuff an hour later. I think we kind of all start at the same time, like they always do. News on at 11, 10 Central. Well, that means it's the same time. So I assume everybody's in the same spots in their day most of the time. We're piling in now. People are coming.
There we go. Double digits. All right.
Yeah. You know what, though? Here's what we're going to try and do. And this is where I need people to like and subscribe and do all the good stuff that we're supposed to do and reply and get that algorithm on YouTube figuring us out, pushing us out to more people. We hit 110-ish yesterday. And, I mean, that's a big deal for us. So we want to, as new as this show is, so we want to build on that. We want to get up there and get after it. So let's see what we can do today.
All right.
In the meantime, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm hanging in there. Had a nice 6.5 mile run this afternoon in the 90-degree heat. So having a little coffee out of my Batman mug.
I'd be asleep.
It's summer, man. It's summer.
I'd be asleep. 90-degree heat and a run would equal a nap for me. No doubt. It sounds like the Prince got rocked yesterday. It sucks. I did too. I got cute. And this is the thing. It doesn't matter. We were in a staff meeting earlier today. I was talking with Upper's lad and the heater that he's been on lately. And for those that don't know, I think he's won 6 GPPs. I think it's the mini max each time. He's won it like 6 times. He seems to win it like once a week. And what he's trying to say, and he's been talking about it in chat for the VIPs, he's basically saying you've got to be uncomfortable with the lineups that you put out there. That means you're taking leverage. If you're comfortable with it, you're probably playing chalk. And while that works on some nights, most nights it's not how you're going to win. You need to be comfortable being way overweight on Tampa Bay and the Angels like last night and whatever else. And his theory is absolutely correct. And it's why he's winning. And more people need to do stuff like that because, I avoided Detroit yesterday. I avoided, who else was a chalk? Was it LA? Mm-hmm. There were 2 teams that were up there, and I avoided those 2. And I liked Milwaukee a lot. And then I really liked that lineup that we kind of poked around with and put together with Cincinnati and Milwaukee and the chalk pitching. And that theory just resonated hardcore with me. That lineup didn't pan out, and Detroit exploded. So what are you going to do? I mean, if you do one of those kind of things and the chalk explodes, just don't even open your laptop or your phone, or it's over for you that night.
Yep.
So, you might eke out something, but you're not gonna get most of your money back. It's just the way that it goes. Hopefully other people did well. I don't know. You said you got killed too, huh?
Yeah, wasn't very good.
It is what it is. Today we got a huge slate. 11 games, 12 games?
Mm-hmm.
That looks like, you said 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm counting the DS that I'm sharing on screen. We got 9 or 12 games. That's 22 teams. You're going to have to cut some down. And that was another thing that Uppers was saying that he does is he cuts down to 10 teams. I cut to 5. When I'm doing MME of any size, I cut down to 5 teams. I feel 5 or 6. I feel like if I can't narrow down the 5 or 6 best teams, and I don't need all 5 of them to be the best. I just need one of them to be the main stack and the one of them on the secondary stack side to be okay. And if I can't find that combo in 5 or 6 teams, then I don't need to be playing. Because I don't need 20 teams of options. I don't care. I'm going to have bad nights because of it, because I'm leaving people completely out of my player pool. But when I have good nights, I've got heavier exposure to those teams and gives me more chance to have that secondary combination or a pitcher or a one-off or something that really pushes me deep into those contests. So tonight, I'm still doing the same thing. I'm cutting down to 5 or 6 teams, and we're just going to let it eat, and I'm going to miss. because the more teams there are, the more chances I have to miss.
And you know that going in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're okay with it.
Yeah. I will say this. If I hit, I tend to play chalkier teams on slates like tonight because the slate dilutes all of that ownership out.
Correct.
So I don't mind taking the chalk. There will be something I get to in the leverage stacks, but I don't mind taking the chalk on nights like tonight because on those huge slates, whatever you hit on typically works. What I will do is I will shift my 4x3 stacking to a little bit more 4x4. Now, I'm not 100% 4x4, but instead of going 100% 4x3 on FanDuel, 100% 4x3, and then like nothing else, I'll do 70-30, and I'll put 30% of the 4x4s in there because, again, the bigger the slate, the more chances two teams go off, and I want them both. And I want as many bats out of both as I can possibly get on a slate like that. And that works in the reverse on the super, super small slates as well. If you go 5x3 or 4x4, those tend to do okay when they do. They don't blow up as often as other stuff. And this is one of those, you only got 3 teams, or 3 games and 6 teams to pick from, and no team is super, super powerful. A lot of times you can go kind of balanced with 3x2, 3x3.
3x3x2, that kind of thing.
Get cut 3 those things chunks. Down.
Yep.
Absolutely cut those things down and kind of over leverage the balance scoring of a slate. Or if you've got the Dodgers or whatever and they blow up, then that's one of those nights you're going to want, again, like a 5x3 or so. You want all the bats out of the one stack. And then if you can get that second team in there, you want all the bats out of that. Tons of leverage on small slates going 4x4 and 5x3. They don't happen as often results wise, but when they do happen, you get tons and tons of leverage on them because nobody does it.
Nobody does it.
And that's the main factor. So I guess that's a quick tidbit for tonight. You spotted something in the weather station, so I'm going to let you talk about that.
I did. And as of now, and we're looking in the Discord, we may not have clarity until, half hour or so before lock, but the Texas-Tampa Bay game is a little iffy. Again, can you pull up the weather station? We have that? Good. Yeah.
Yep. I'm on it, baby.
There you are. So you guys can see there, postpone risk 20%, not terribly crazy, but the in-game risk is that 60%, 50%. I can look at my monitor over here, 50, right? When it gets into the red, that's when I start to say, okay, maybe I want to not go with the pitchers there. The batters, I think, are fine when we're not terribly concerned with the game getting postponed. The batters can wait out an hour delay here and there, right? But, you get in the middle of the second inning and then all of a sudden the game shuts down for an hour and a half, your starting pitchers aren't coming back out.
Right.
So for me, I'm probably going to, at the moment, take those couple of pitchers. I don't even think I have Molly in my pool right now, but I'm probably going to take Rasmussen out and see if we get any clarification closer to lock. But as far as I'm concerned, the bats are still fine, regardless of what's going to happen.
Look at all the green temperatures, all the upper 70s and lower 80s. I mean, summer's here, boys.
Look at the wind too. Out to left 6, out to left 16, out to right 18, out to right 10.
Yeah.
Lots of offenses have a really nice chance to go off tonight.
Yeah. And these are, to me, typically kind of minor chances. But see, and I'm not going to dive into that and say, 83 degrees in from right versus 83 degrees out to right. I'm going to go all in on Atlanta, and I'm going to fade the Cincinnati game. The hell with it. Cincinnati is still a tiny little ballpark. The temperature, it's still warm. It's not like it's a 25-mile-an-hour wind blowing in. It's just 10 miles an hour or less. I don't know how the wind affects that stadium, if it's much of a factor in that stadium at all. All I know is that the ball still flies out because last week we were, it's really chilly up there in Minnesota. Bam, they hit like 3 home runs. Yep. Shit happens.
We've seen that in Wrigley a few times, this year. Middle of April, it's, 15 miles in and it's 50 degrees, but, the Cubs scored 13 runs or whatever. So it's all singles and doubles, but you still want pieces of it. So
these are minor factors. What I look at is I look at those temperatures, and there are not a lot of cold spots tonight. So anybody has a chance.
Yep.
Let's, and there's something I want to do. I kind of thought today, maybe we could talk a little bit more about some of the smaller slates too. So if we power through pitching, hitting, a little bit of that type of stuff, give some people some marching orders on the big slate. What I would like to do is I would like to dive into a couple of the smaller slates and talk about what might change. Because on big slates like this, I don't know about the audience or whatever out there. On big slates like today, I'll do a little bit on the main slate because we get ownership for it and whatever else. But man, the small slates have always been more successful for me because, again, it limits the choices, it limits the field. I would take my budget, I'll cut it in half, and I'll play half my shit later tonight, as opposed to all on the main slate, because it's easier to pin down leverage spots. It's easier to pin down the chalk. It's easier to decide whether you want to get on it or off of it. There's not 5 teams with winning chances. There's a couple, and people will make more mistakes on those smaller slates, in my opinion, than they will on the bigger slates. Because on the bigger slate, with 3 or 4 or 5 A-plus opportunities, they're splitting hairs between all of those top opportunities. And so I don't know what's going to work out. When there's more of a separation between those A, B, C opportunities, then I'm going to be able to pick those apart a little bit better in the smaller fields. Whatever, I just do better on those smaller slates. So I would like to at least talk about that a little bit today too. So let's talk pitching, and let's look. Let me share that tab back on Domination Station again.
We looking at DraftKings?
We can look at FanDuel if you want.
DraftKings is fine. I think there are a couple of interesting.
I was looking at FanDuel. Let's look at DraftKings. Cool. More pitching options.
Yeah, I think there are just a couple of interesting things. I think Tattoo did the notes today, but Raz, as always, has his pitching video, which hopefully everybody has listened to. Carlos Rodon is the chalkiest on both sites. He's right now pulling 27 on DraftKings, and he is pulling 17 on FanDuel. He's pitching like the Yankees hoped he would pitch when they signed him a couple of years ago. Last year was kind of a throwaway year, but now he's back to what he's done. Cleveland doesn't strike out a ton, but their offense isn't terribly good either, outside of a couple of pieces. Rodon over almost a 32% K rate on the season. So he's got good upside. He's got a good matchup too. They're over a 200 favorite to win. The Yankees are too. Spencer Strider is interesting. He's pulling ownership too. And I don't know if and I think Raz kind of mentioned, I believe Raz mentioned him not getting to him in his pool. This is only his 4th start back from injury, and he hasn't gone very deep in any of them. He's gone, I think, 4, 4, and 5 or something like that in the first couple of starts. And so he's pulling ownership. I don't know if they're anticipating it's just he's going to be at a full workload. I haven't seen anything to indicate yes or no. I would tend to think they want to kind of be careful with him coming off of Tommy John and everything. And it's not like the Braves are facing the White Sox. They're facing the Diamondbacks, who have bats in their lineup. So for me, I'm not going to have him in my pool. I don't. Did Tattoo have him on his sheet?
I did not look.
Okay. But just for me personally, I'm not going to have him in my pool just because I don't necessarily trust yet that he's all the way back. Now, if it were a smaller slate, I could go either way. But I personally don't see the 17% ownership on FanDuel and the 25% on DraftKings. I don't necessarily understand that a little bit. So that's just something that I'm noticing a little bit. That's kind of a little wonky to me. Hunter Green is chalky too, facing Milwaukee. Green's always got great K upside. The other side is kind of interesting too, if you want kind of a little tournament pivot from him. Freddie Peralta. The Reds are striking out the 5th most in the league. So if you wanted a piece of that game in your tournaments, again, it's in Great America's Ballpark. So there is always the possibility that the game kind of explodes a little bit offensively. But just from a standpoint of how they've been pitching this year, Peralta's, I think I made in my notes, Peralta's got as many strikeouts on the season that Green does. And his opponent is striking out more. So that, I mean, I love that kind of at half the ownership. Green's pulling 10 on FanDuel and Peralta's a little under 5. Green's at almost 20 on DraftKings and around 12 on FanDuel and around 12 on DraftKings. So there's a nice little pivot maybe for you. And I think the other one I like is Pablo Lopez.
Their K scores. Hunter Green's a 542 and Freddie Peralta's only a 457.
Right. Which again, there's that kind of balance, right, in terms of what they're projected at versus what the team is doing. So again, that's a nice little pivot just based on kind of the seasons that they've been having and the opponents that they've been having too. Pablo Lopez is the other one that I like. Yes, it's in Atlanta. It's in a hitter-friendly park, but the A's are, I think, 1-18 in their last 19 games, and I think they've only scored 65, 66 runs in those 19 games. And Lopez is doing his normal thing about limiting runs, limiting batters. So again, as a tournament play, I like him a lot too.
Yeah, he's up there in Carnage Report as well. He's fourth best for pitchers, and he's got over a 500K score, so he's definitely in play. The way I would do things too, with minimal research, I would just see that and be like, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
How much you use him, totally up to you. But yeah, good tournament pick. I like it.
If you're paying down, I mean, maybe a piece or two a little bit. It feels a little gross, but I get Landon Raup a little bit. Again, San Diego is cold. It's in San Francisco. He's been solid this season. He goes deep into games fairly. His ERA is 3.5. So if you wanted to pay down a little bit, maybe I can see it. And then also pieces, Brian Bayo and Yusei Kikuchi, just because each of their opponents, the Red Sox and Angels, strike out a ton. So maybe they're more attractive on FanDuel because you get rewarded more for the strikeouts. But I think they're in play on both sides too.
Yeah, you had mentioned. Let's see if I can find it here. Not Zach Gallen. It's the other side of the game. Anyway, it's Arizona that would be the bats that are the other side of the game that you were talking about. I've already forgotten who the main team was. It's Atlanta. And with Spencer Strider, and with him maybe being treated a little bit with kid gloves, if they haven't completely taken those shackles off yet, and he does have some sort of limited or shortened start, then, and if anybody knows for sure, definitively, like you've seen it on beat writers and Twitter and whatever, put it in the comment section, share it with everybody. We would appreciate that information. But Atlanta, at that point, I'm looking at the bullpen side of things, and I guess it's the Arizona bats that I need to be looking at. Wherever they went.
Too many things.
I had it called up, but I was looking at the bullpen side of the research station, and they are actually, I guess, down here more towards the bottom. If I could find it again, there's Atlanta, and you're looking at pretty middling numbers: 45% hard contact, 48% fly ball. Home run per 9 is what I look for in the bullpen's only giving up like a 1.3 home run per 9. So Sierra's under 4. So it doesn't look like Atlanta bullpen is terrible, because a lot of times when you say, oh, well, that starter's capped and limited, then we could look at those bats, because if they can chase him early and get into the bullpen, Atlanta's bullpen's okay.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a major weak spot and something that you really, really want to target. Now, of course, again, let's say you torch Spencer Strider for 8 innings in the first and you chase him. Well, now you're getting into the mop-up duty and you're getting into the bad side of the bullpen. So these numbers are kind of whatever. But it's important to know that those are things when you hear starting pitcher possibly not on a full workload, the DFS mind should immediately say, well, let's go check that bullpen. Because if he is limited and he is capped, well, let's see what we could get in the later 4 or 5 innings of that game.
Right.
So just my tip.
And that's a big reason why I've got him as a 2-star. stack rather than a 3. It's because if they get into that bullpen, right? It's not like it's a slam dunk.
Right on. Let's do hitting. Let's pull up those leverage stacks and let's take a peek at those babies.
Cool.
So when I sorted by
look at
ownership,
mine.
I need to refresh it just to get the current numbers
Same.
and see if anything has changed. And it has a little bit. Minnesota came up actually a little bit.
Ooh.
So 95% on a Tuesday, 12 games. It's pretty chalky. Again, chalk's a relative term on a Tuesday. But look at the drop-off from 95% Minnesota to 54% Detroit. And in theory, Detroit people should be chasing points. Philly, 52%. For look, it gets real even right there between Detroit at 54% down to about Atlanta 38%. There's a pretty big traffic jam of about 8 teams there. So one thing I've done and these are all just things I've done for people. You could take Minnesota, boom, knock them out of your player pool completely, and play teams 2 through 10. And I mean, if it works, it works. You could also do the whole, well, I really like the spot Minnesota's in, so I want to mix them with. I'm not going to mix them with Detroit or Philly that's number 2 or 3. I might mix them with Boston, or I might mix them with, St. Louis or Atlanta or whatever. That's all fine too. But if you're looking for very, very simple research, instead of diving deep, you just got off work and you just want to throw some teams together, you can fade that top team quite often and just play the rest of them and be okay.
Or just put them on your small stack side.
That too.
If you really want a piece of them, right? Don't go heavy on the full stack.
Right. Absolutely. I've done that tons, and I do that in the big MMEs when I'm just setting the DS up. I'm like, boop, uncheck Detroit or Minnesota, or uncheck them on the big side, leave them in on the small side. Mm-hmm. Let the rest of the teams eat, and let's see where it lands. And it has, any given night, it has success. All you're trying to do is put together essentially winning habits and a winning process, and then just from there, take your hands off the controls and 6 months worth of a baseball season, let the good nights and the bad nights happen.
You can also do that same kind of thing. If for example, the Dodgers were at that 95% and then there's that big drop off, right? Well, that the Dodgers are always going to be one of the most expensive stacks. Put them in only on your 2 stack side, right? Because you're going to get in some cheaper 5 stacks that are in a solid spot. And then the DS is going to fill in with your Freeman and your Shohei as the 2 stack, the ones that do have all of the upside. And that's, when they do go off, chances are those are the pieces that are going to go off for the Dodgers. And then they're going to go along with whatever that bigger 5 stack of that cheaper, lower owned team along with them.
Right. Now, DePrince asks a good question. He said, on a slate like this, I thought you would use the chalk. And that's true. I do, because I discount heavily the chalk. But what I'm pointing out to you, DePrince, and to everybody else, in my mind, the way I would see this when I'm looking at this tool, is that Minnesota number on ownership is so high compared to everybody else that it tells me that it warrants a fade. I mean, if you're trying to get, now, if you want to play Minnesota, there's nothing wrong with playing Minnesota. But what I might do is I might look at that and say, I'm only going to eliminate one team of the top 10, and that's the team I'm going to eliminate, not because they're 62% and the next one down is 58%. We're talking 95 to 50 whatever. To me, that 95 to 54 is I look for breakpoints. That's just how I see things. That's how I do things. And when I see those breakpoints, I usually make a decision based on those, because if everybody is, and not everybody, but if people are going to Minnesota and then there's a huge drop off among all those other teams, I can play all those other teams and not worry about Minnesota tonight. Mm-hmm. Friday night, when it's another big 12 game slate, you might hear me say something completely different, because the numbers will blend together more, like the 95, 92, 89, 86, 70. You won't hear me say that on a night like that. You'll hear me say whatever. They're all running together. But when you get those big gaps, that's what I like to look for. And if you followed anything like the VIPs, if they follow anything about when I've played cash games and stuff like that and do the 50-50s and whatnot, that's how I set the DS up. I just go looking through sort by ownership. I look for breakpoints. Is there a break from 25 to 20 or 20 to 15? Or where's that break? Boom, that's where I cut the line. I don't want anybody under-owned to those. And I'll just build a cash lineup based on high ownership alone. It works. I mean, it doesn't work every time. I've got guys in my DMs like, I'm having a horrible year. And yeah, you know what? I mean, I've had horrible years too, but we're looking at the long run. And the long run is, I asked AI, I asked ChatGPT, the long run for baseball, 500 slates.
That's 3 seasons.
That's what AI wants. 500 slates. If you don't come at AI with 500 slates worth of historical data that you've tracked in your own spreadsheets and you've backed up, AI is going to laugh at you and say, not enough sample size, buddy. Meaning you don't really know where you're at in the realm of standard deviation and variance and volatility. You don't really know yet.
Law of large numbers. Mm-hmm.
Get to 500, it starts to smooth things out. Now we can start to talk about whether or not you beat the games or whether or not you have. So for anybody else out there that says, oh, I can't even go 20 games without tracking it, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you never know where you are because you're not tracking your numbers over time. You've got to track your numbers. So any sneaky spots you see in those leverage opportunities? Like I said, I would just blanket play teams 2 through 9, like Detroit down to LA or Atlanta, and just be like, just give me those pieces. But if you're building single entry or you're building 3 max, what would you do? Who would you key in on?
Who would I key in on? I mean, the Dodgers are always viable. Again, I think, Philly, Bowden Francis hasn't really shown me anything. I don't know if I could go back to Detroit. I feel like I would be chasing. I mean, I'm going to have them. I'd have them in your MME mix. Mm-hmm. I mean, Shane Smith is solid, but it feels a little chasey just with 24 teams available to you tonight. I really, really like Tampa Bay if the game ends up playing. They're one of my favorite stacks tonight. They've just got so many players, both of those, Caminero, Aranda. I mean, I would start with the 4 of them. They're just all 4 hitting super well, and we know that Tampa is a hitter's park too. So as long as the weather holds and the game doesn't postpone, that might be one of my favorite spots. And they're going to be I think they're going to be a little bit cheaper if we're looking at salary. Yeah, they're kind of right in the middle of the pack salary wise too. So I might think of a little Tampa stack within a couple of, like, maybe the smaller stack is your LA or your Yankee. The Mets, I think, could be sneaky. I think this is Kershaw's second start back. And so again, he didn't show anything in his first start. And we know the Mets have pop. So the Mets, I think, could, for me, might be a nice little sneaky under the radar pick.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I would also,
and it's out in LA where I think the weather is warm, and
you can't count out Yankees. They're down the list too. Seattle sometimes can be intriguing. So teams that I look for, I'm looking right now here. I'll share this really quick, guys. This is a free source, MLB.com team stats. I'll like to go to the last 30 days, last 14 days, 15 days, whatever. Sort by home runs, see who's hitting the pop. Go to OPS, see who's doing it as a lineup and not necessarily as individual players. And in the last 30 days, Detroit way down the list. And the reason I went looking for that when Darth was saying that was to offer a little bit of validity to chasing points off of last night, which we know 40th win on the season, best record in baseball, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We win a variety of ways. We win through pitching, we win through hitting, whatever. We know they've got a good offense or had been playing really, really well, scoring a lot of runs. They've apparently dropped off in the last 30 days. They're a very middling offense right now, which actually means that they're probably underperforming with a good bit of what they were. So tonight might be point chasing based on current form. If it was, let's say, the Toronto Blue Jays, who are third on this list in OPS, hitting 805 as a team, I would say maybe this has been sustainable for the last week or so, and we just kind of missed it because they've been on different slates or they've been on whatever else. And that might be something worth going back to the well on. But yeah, I second what you said in Detroit. And this is just everybody's got to get used to asking questions. Ask the follow-up question. Oh, so and so doesn't like Detroit. Why? So and so loves, Atlanta. Why? And then clarify those. That's what the VIP chat's for. You guys get the opportunity to talk to these coaches one on one, where when you're having a question about, I wonder about those athletics and how they're blah 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 blah, and some coach craps on them and says, I don't really like them tonight. Ask him why. Ask him to come with some numbers. Ask him to back ask him to back up his theory, and then he'll explain it to you. And then you can then take even better information and choose to accept or reject it and continue building your lineups. That's the type of stuff that really, really helps you guys narrow down what it is you're doing and get you guys on winning tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. We got a quiet crowd today. Not a lot of questions in there.
A lot of people watching, though. It's good.
I like it. Yes, I agree with up to 75, 76. Hopefully we get it over 100 before we call it here in about 15 minutes. But in terms of where else to go, I want to take a look at those other slates really quickly.
Sure.
Let's take a peek and see, because, again, I'm a big fan of the small slates on days like today. We haven't talked about this on any of the shows yet today, so or this past couple of weeks. If I look at the night slate, that's probably the one that I would focus on. It's 4 games. I think the late night or after hours, whatever they call it, it's 2 games. And that actually does have some intrigue to it because it's a featured slate, which means it's got the quarter arcade. And it's got some of the dime times. It's got some of that stuff working on it. So Those are the stuff, if you want to build 20 or 40 lineups, maybe you can get 40 in. But the night slate surely can. And again, these are things that you've got to know early in the day. Tuesday's a big slate day. So go looking at those smaller slates and start taking those dime times as they open. They're not going to open as fast as they open on a main slate, maybe, but you're still going to get them. If you watch it throughout the day, you can get 2 or 3 or 4
or 3 sometimes.
Right.
Yep.
And that's a huge key. If you like to MME and you like to practice MME and you want to play a 4-game slate instead of 12-game slate, that's how you do it. You get up and you look at lunch or whatever and take one, and then come back at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, take another. Come back at 6 o'clock at night, take another. Now you got 60 lineups that you can throw out there. Looking at Baltimore, Seattle, San Diego, San Francisco, Minnesota, and the Athletics, Mets, Dodgers. We're not going to have ownership on a slate like that, so we have to go off of what we know. And when we look at the pitching pool, what do we already know? Well, Pablo Lopez and maybe Kirby. And you've got a couple others. And you could dive into things like the Carnage Report. And I'll even show that one here really quick. I don't typically show this much on a given day, but I feel like it's important to show everybody what's up and how you kind of use this stuff. So I would come down here and be looking at Carnage Report, and I see there's Rob that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Low Carnage. Might not matter on the big slate.
Right.
But on the small slate.
And if that's where you really wanted exposure, that's where you get him. Maybe you fade him on the main, and then you go a little bit over on the smaller slate just to kind of hedge a little bit.
Absolutely. Now he's struggling a little bit with strikeouts and whatnot, but he's maybe been throwing some pretty clean stuff, and it's more about the lineup he's facing and how bad San Diego's been. That maybe there's some suppression there. Maybe he picks up the win. Maybe he doesn't get hit really, really hard, therefore brings value for his price. And right beneath him is Pablo Lopez. I didn't see who some others. I don't think Rasmus isn't on that slate.
No, he's not.
Looking down here, kind of going off of memory. Bayo a little bit. Are they on the late slate?
No.
Kershaw is. But see, now you're dipping down into the middle to the almost lower half of Carnage.
Yep.
So these are becoming stack opportunities against down here on the bottom side of the Carnage Report. Whereas the top, the greens and the blues, are the guys you want to be considering for your pitching pool. So if you only see 2 or 3 names up there, with Rupp and Lopez, whatever, those might be your guys.
Mm-hmm. And especially if you're only playing the dimes, who cares if you're locking 2 or 3? That's it.
Right.
So just play 2 pitchers in your player pool and then just get different in your stacks.
Absolutely. And you might avoid like a Kershaw or something like that. You might come down here and you're starting looking for who would we be stacking against, or who would we be stacking? Let's see. Dodgers, Twins. Twins are obviously going to be chalk. Yeah. Twins are going to be chalk again. When they're chalk on the main, they're going to be chalk on the small slates, but other teams will slide up. Dodgers will become more important probably. I don't know. Mets, maybe.
Yeah.
Seattle, maybe. But everybody now all of a sudden, whereas Baltimore, just completely irrelevant on the main slate, most likely, becomes kind of a contrarian option on the small slate because we've only got 8 teams to choose from. And if you go double check that one on Carnage again, look down here, where's Baltimore? Baltimore is unknown against Kirby for some reason. It didn't pull stats on him.
Because Kirby's only pitched once or twice so far this season. So we don't have enough data for him.
You could go back historically and you could look up those numbers and find it out. But LA against Miguel's, like you said, that's who you would want to attack. 6.26 on the Carnage, 150 ISO against. Not a bad place to go. Seattle against Sagano, another high Carnage. Seattle becomes relevant. Let's put it that way. They might be like an outside shot on the main. They become very relevant on the small slate. Mm-hmm. And that's a 1.8 ISO against almost. Just trying to show guys how you might use those and play those different slates. Is that similar to what you would do?
Absolutely. Yep. And like I said, these are the spots where you can, take more of a stand on some teams. These are spots to go heavier on some teams and fade them on the main, especially when it's such a big difference between a 12 game versus a 4 game. Like you said, you could almost cut a third of the teams out of the pool entirely on the main slate when it's a slate that big. But then this is a spot to kind of go over on them, right? I've got the Mets as a 2-star, maybe I don't play them at all, but then maybe they're one of my 4 stars here if I'm playing the small slate, just because of the matchup. So you can kind of hedge a little bit. You can kind of mix and match and balance a little bit.
And that's the thing I like to talk about as well is whatever you're doing on the main. Man, I'm all in on Minnesota because they're generating leverage on the main, even though they look chalky. They're not, crazy chalky or whatever. It goes a little bit against what we were saying. But then if you're going to do that, you say, I'm going to take them on the main because they're going to have a little bit more leverage, lower ownership comparatively on the main. They're going to be really chalky on the late or the after hours. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm going to fade them.
Yep.
And I'm going to go find alternative 2 and 3. And that's where I'm not taking a whole lot of Seattle on the main, but I'm going to load up on the late. Mm-hmm. And that's how you get, and like you say, you work those slates against each other, and then you can kind of play 2 or 3 slates through the night. And
like you said at the beginning, what Uppers was saying, right? Like you have to feel uncomfortable in a lot of ways with how you structure your stacks, how you structure your exposure to some of these teams. If like you said, if you feel comfortable, then you're probably playing the chalk, and it's either going to go really, really well for you, or more than likely it's going to go really, really poorly. Because again, just of how volatile baseball is. So again, these smaller slates are kind of, if you're a little bit more risk averse, the smaller slates are maybe the spot that you want to start playing and kind of extending that level of risk tolerance for yourself, right? Again, I'm going to fade Minnesota because they're super chalky. They're on the main, they're going to be super chalky here. I'm going to fade that. I'm going to feel a little uncomfortable about doing that, but I'm also going to gain leverage on the field, right?
And you know what I'm
taking the shots there.
You know what I'm going to hear is well, I did kind of what you said. I took them on the main and I faded them on the late night, and they did just good enough on the late night to do some damage, but they didn't do shit on the main, and I lost them both. And I thought when you work on hedging against yourself, you can hedge against yourself so much that you take away all of your upside and all of your ceiling. And that's the death of a DFS player as well. You've got to be overexposed in a few areas to have a shot to actually do something great. That's just the nature of the game. And it's uncomfortable, definitely, because you really know that you've really put yourself out there. To Prince asks on FanDuel, what should you look at when he's building one lineup?
Well, the great thing, I like FanDuel just because I think it's easier to build lineups. The pricing is a little bit less restrictive, so you can get the sort of the top tier pitchers with some solid stacks. So I'm going to pick one of my 2. I would start with one of the 2 or 3 pitchers that I super like. And to me, it almost doesn't matter how expensive they are because you can fit in solid stacks on FanDuel a little bit better. If you're paying up for 2 pitchers on DraftKings, you're most likely going to pay down everywhere else for your hitters. It's a little bit less restrictive there on FanDuel. So I'm going to choose the pitcher I like the most and start there. So like tonight, I would take Rodon or Lopez or Green, one of them. Then I'm going to pick the team that I like the most, one of my 4, my 3s. I'm going to build and pick the 4 hitters I like there, and then kind of figure out what I have left over. So I'm really starting with the pitcher and the 4 stack that I like the most, and then just seeing what else I can fit in. I'm not going to go down necessarily to an unowned team. I'm going to stay kind of in that top area of the teams on my sheet, the teams that I like, unless I really have a bend, or if it's a larger single entry, I might get a little crazy. Like maybe I'm going to stack Dodgers and Mets, but I'm going to stay kind of in that top ish 4 and 3 star range in terms of the stacks that I'm using. And then as far as the one-offs, I'm always trying to find a one-off that has good upside. I don't ever want to put in an 8 or a 9 hitter that, is $2,200 and, maybe you'll score 8 points, right? The one-off I want double-digit upside. So kind of just balancing all of that together is how I do my single lineup if I'm doing one on FanDuel.
Makes perfect sense to me. I'm resizing the screen here for people so they can see the teams actually over here on the left. For some reason that wasn't showing before. But you're still going 4x3. You're still building big stacks. You're still you're just looking for leverage in one of those key spots, and you want your one-off to have that ability to carry the slate. I mean, I want a guy like Kerry Carpenter. Last night's my one-off.
Yep.
I mean, the team went off. But in a lot of cases, you have those nights where those guys hit 2 bombs or 3 bombs, and the team scores 4 or 5 runs, and nobody outside of him really did a whole lot of damage. Or you get one of those nights where Kansas City, Bobby Witt steals 2 bases and hits a home run or hits with a cycle or some crap like that. That's one of those situations where you're just like, Kansas City didn't do squat. He had a night. That's my one-off. Those are the guys. I'm not keying in on Mikael Garcia at the bottom of the Kansas City order. I will say this. Here's an interesting tip. What's the guy's name? See if I can find it. And where would I find it? I would have to find it in starting lineups. So what the hell? We're showing everything today. Let's go ahead and share it once it loads. Come on, baby, load up. So I want to show everybody something. I just saw this on Twitter. One of the prospects from Kansas City came up.
Oh, Jack Caglione.
That's the boy.
Yep,
and
hitting 6th.
That's the thing. He didn't come in and hit 8 or 9. They put him 6. So he's going to be dirt cheap. Look at that, starting off at 3,500 on DK. That's interesting. He's not a 2K punt, but he's cheap on FanDuel.
Yep.
And the way I'm looking at this, when I see something like this, and this is a highly touted kid, he's batting kind of middle of the order. He's going to get his opportunity, and I don't know, St. Louis, what the matchup is or whatever.
It's Andre Palante. He's not facing, Cy Young or anything.
That's right. That's kind of what I'm getting at. It may not be a total turd, but it's not an ace. And usually when these kids come up, advantage hitter, because they know they get the lineup, they get the scouting report on the pitcher from all that body of work. And their teammates and their scouting system, everybody says, look fastballs away, and this is what he's done to new guys, and blah 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 blah. And nobody's seen what the kid can do on the Cardinals side. So, am I saying he's going to have a big game? No. What I am saying is it's probably a little more likely than usual that he'll pay off his salary. So, if he's the kind of guy that you need a cheap fill-in somewhere, he would be somebody that I would leave checked in. If I'm fading Kansas City, or I'm only including these guys in stacks because Kansas City doesn't have a lot of power, blah blah blah, all the stuff that is all true, he might be the one exception to that rule where I'm like, you know what, I might slot him in a few lineups just because it's probably a little bit more likely that he can pay off his salary tonight because he starts off so cheap and nobody's got a book on him. That's just me. That's the way I look at these things when I see these things. Bing King says he's with the Tigers trend. I agree, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a lot else for today. I almost forgot the Kansas City thing. I was going to throw that at people too and try and sound like the smartest guy in the room, and I almost let myself continue to sound stupid. So
I'm slightly almost considering him as the dinger of the day.
Are you really?
We see that a lot, don't we? It seems like we see half the time when these big prospects come up, they hit a home run.
I wonder what his number is.
So
I wonder what his prop is. If anybody knows, go look that home run prop up there, and if it's plus 300, plus 400 or better, or longer, I might throw a buck on it. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
It gives me something. I can't tell you the last time I was rooting for anything in Kansas City, other than to stay off the shitter from the barbecue.
Raz had a great call yesterday. He had Carpenter as his dinger of the day.
Jeez, triple up.
So Carpenter had been ice cold before that yesterday.
Yeah.
So again, I think that's just baseball in a nutshell, right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes it doesn't matter if a team's doing well; they can get shut out. Sometimes it doesn't matter if a team's on a big losing streak, then they'll blow up, right? All they have to have is the opportunity, right? Raz had him as core yesterday. I had him as core yesterday. And he went off. So,
yep. That's absolutely how that tends to go.
Yep.
So it seems. So we all have to pay ample attention to that. And like I said, I'm not making some bold call that he's going to have some monster night. I'm saying don't be surprised if he gets his first single.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a double. I don't know if the kid's got wheels. I don't know if there's men on base when it happens. I don't know any of that. But it takes, let's say he hits some kind of a two-base clearing double, picks up a couple RBI, throw him the game ball, roll it into the dugout, and the next thing you know, the kid's got 9.5 points and demolished his salary on both DraftKings and FanDuel. That's the kind of chance that I don't mind giving a little bump to.
The wind is blowing out there too.
Oh, look out. There we go. All right. You heard it, man. You guys heard it. Darth called double dong. He called it. All right, man.
I might put him in as my call just because.
Just because. That's fun.
Yep.
And you know what? I'm
going to go do that. I'm doing that right now. That's my bold call.
I was telling somebody last night. They said that Yelich hit a bomb and he'd been really cold, and I can't stand Yelich. Really can't stand him anymore because he's been so cold since his MVP season's up there. And I was like, You know what? He hit a bomb last night. I'm really surprised I didn't call him on the show and say he was just a total turd. Because the minute that I do that, if I say some guy's just a complete schlep, he'll go double dong or something like that. Because
that's how it works.
That's how that just seems to be how it works. Thank you, Dixon, for telling everybody to hit the like button. And yeah, he says take a sprinkle of Caglione on 2+ strikeouts at plus 450 as a hedge too. Not a bad, depending on the price you get on the home run. You know what? That's almost arbitrage.
Almost.
Because if you've got the home run, now it's feast or famine. It's not any hit or whatever. But you got the home run, you got the multiple Ks. If he wears the golden sombrero, you get most of your money back. Whatever. Interesting. I like that idea. That's good, smart, sharp sports betting. And speaking of sharp, check our bowlers out over there as well. Yeah. I can be done. I can be out. I can go build my lineups and go dump them in. I think I'm going to play FanDuel tonight and probably not DraftKings unless I hit that late slate on DraftKings. What are you doing? Are you doing both sides?
No, just FanDuel a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, then we'll report back. Who's Thursday? You?
Tattoo.
Okay. So then there we go.
Tattoo's with you tomorrow. Yep.
And then I think you two might be doing Friday?
I think so, yep.
Because Friday I've got to leave town again and hit a lake daughter bachelorette party. Somebody needs to drive a boat. It ends up being me.
It ends up being you.
Yeah, and it's not the best environment because I'm going to go be around a bunch of drunk college girls. And the problem is one of them is my daughter.
No.
So you can't get out of line in a situation like that, right?
Nope.
Not that I would anyway. Anyway, shout out to everybody. Thanks for watching. DFSArmy.com, MLB Live Block Show for me, for Darth. We'll kick this one into the night and see you guys on Thursday. Darth will be back on Friday.
Yep.
So
helmets up.
All right. Sounds great. Go win some money, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.